Broadcasting live from Tropical Island on the plain of Dominaria, this is Tap Tap Concede. Welcome everybody to Tap Tap Concede. My name is Graham and joining me is Nelson.
Hi, I'm here.
And Wheeler.
Hi, it's great to be here.
Wait, what podcast are you on? Hold on, what's going on here?
This is Tap Tap 100, right?
North Concession.
Oh,
That's not a bad name for a podcast, honestly. Tap Tap 100. It sounds a little anime, perhaps.
I attack with my library.
Yeah. If you are here for part 2 of our D&D Adventures in the Forgotten Realms sort of lore and D&D histories, mechanical relating to Dungeons & Dragons tabletop role-playing game deep dive with our friend Shivam Bhatt, worry not, that is still forthcoming. In fact, at the time of recording this, we've already recorded that, but we're going to hold off on it for a week because a whole bunch of stuff happened that we feel like we should really talk about, and that's what we're going to do this week. So come back next week for that, but stay this week for this, which is discussions of JumpStart Historic Horizons, which, for reasons that will become very clear, you are not able to order from our sponsor, Card Kingdom, but you should still check them out for all of your other cardboard needs. cardkingdom.com/LRR. Let them know we sent you. Ask for a button. They'll give you a little 1-inch button. Right now, it still says Big Oof, and we really appreciate you doing so, and we thank Card Kingdom for their continued support, and you for yours at patreon.com/loadingreadyrun. Thanks for letting us do everything that it is that we do. So yeah, JumpStart Historic Horizons. Definitely the most, I think, discourse fuel I have seen since probably the Walking Dead Secret Lair, if I had to guess. It's kind of a big deal, and a lot of people have a lot of things to say about it, and I mean, why should we be any different? I'm going to start at the top. I should mention also that's why Wheeler is joining us on this episode, because we felt that he would have some good insight into this as a sort of a digital-only thing and what that means for historic, considering the implications, certainly for Gladiator, which hopefully everyone checked out and enjoyed the great big Gladiator games, because that was a super fun time. But yeah, arriving on Arena very soon, like barely giving Forgotten Realms a chance to breathe, it feels like. On August 12th, JumpStart is coming back to Magic Arena, but it's a new, different JumpStart, and it's called JumpStart Historic Horizons. So they decided that what they wanted to do was inject a bunch of cards, hundreds of cards, from Modern Horizons and Modern Horizons 2 and other places into Historic. And for whatever reason, they determined that the medium by which they were going to do that was a second edition of JumpStart. And that's, we can talk about that in and of itself in a moment. Like I said, I'm just trying to lay the groundwork of all the facts that we know so far. So that's what they decided to do. But the big sort of surprising thing is that they are also including a whole bunch of cards in these packs, in the JumpStart packets, that are exclusive to Arena and that feature mechanics that can only exist in a digital version of Magic. And I'm going to talk about what those mechanics are, and then we can talk about sort of how we're feeling. I will say, as longtime listeners of Tap Tap Concede will know, TLDR, this will not be the thing that kills Magic, and I don't think it's as terrifying as, several hot take machines have purported it to necessarily be, but I think it's definitely something we got to talk about. So, we will do that. That's what this episode is. But first of all, let's talk about these digital only mechanics. So the first one is Seek. Let me give an example with Manor Guardian. So Manor Guardian is 2 and a black for a 4/3 demon, which is already great, actually. Just realizing a 4/3 for 3 mana that's a pretty good card. You'd play that.
it's just kind of above rate and easy to cast.
Yeah, it's actually just good. But its rules box is when Manor Guardian dies, each player, that's why it's cheap. Okay. Each player seeks a non-land card with mana value 2 or less. So what does seek actually mean? Well, it means that it grabs a card from your deck that fits the criteria. It's not a tutor. You don't get to choose which one. It grabs a random card from your deck that matches that criteria. Now, of course, if in Constructed, you can build your deck around making sure to only have certain cards that hit that criteria. But that's how Seek works. It just means it's going to pull something from your deck that meets N criteria, and then the game just carries on. So it doesn't bring up your library and you sift through and decide which one you want. It just goes, oh, okay, you're going to seek? Great. What are you looking for? Awesome. Here you go. Carry on with the game.
Doesn't even shuffle.
Does it not? Oh, it doesn't.
Does not shuffle.
Yeah, it doesn't affect cards you scry to the bottom, or it doesn't affect like cards you've controlled to the top with scrying as well, or similar effects. Yeah.
All right. The next is perpetually, which is spells that permanently change the characteristics of a card, no matter where it goes afterwards. So an example here is Baffling Defenses. 1 and a white for an instant. Target creature's base power perpetually becomes 0. So the difference here, right, is that prior to, in paper magic, this would be a creature enchantment with flash that just said, we enchant this creature and the creature's thing is 0. Except in this case, it's not an enchantment, so you can't remove the enchantment later. And it does specify wherever it goes afterwards, meaning that if you do this to a creature and then that creature dies in the graveyard, that creature's power is still 0. And there's some interesting things that people have talked about with that as it relates to Brawl that we'll talk about a little later, because the third ability is Conjure, which Wizards words it as create cards out of thin air as a digital object that acts just like a normal card would. So they have the card here, Shoreline Scout. It is a single blue mana for a 1/1 Merfolk Scout. When Shoreline Scout enters the battlefield, you may exile a Merfolk or land card from your hand. If you do, conjure a tropical island card to your hand. As long as another Merfolk or island enter the battlefield under your control this turn, Shoreline Scout gets +1/+0. So what that means is you play Shoreline Scout, then you exile a Merfolk or a land from your card, and a copy, not a token, but a copy of the card, Tropical Island, appears in your hand. It doesn't come from your deck. It doesn't come from your sideboard. It just exists in your hand now as a card, and then the game carries on.
Jordan, real quick, can we edit in me cutting in after Graham says what that means is, and then I say, Blue finally has a solidly playable Savannah Lions? Or just don't do any of that editing. That's fine too.
Just leave it exactly as recorded. It's so much funnier. Yeah, so that's another weird thing as well. So there have been a lot of other cards spoiled that are just sort of stuff from Modern Horizons. There's cards with these abilities. I don't know where we want to start, because this is it's a whole big thing. Let's start on the easier end of the scale. How do we feel about Wizards? Let's ignore all the arena-only digital mechanics for now. We will get to them. But let's talk about, we're going to inject hundreds of cards from Modern Horizons and Modern Horizons 2 onto Arena through the medium of JumpStart. How do we feel about that?
Well, the JumpStart distribution model is not that great. As somebody that had to buy, or craft rather, a single copy of every card from JumpStart the last time, that took a very long time. And I know had to is definitely not the right way of putting that. But
I feel like you get a pass.
Yeah. I guess for a completionist sense, and technically it's work. But so for that extreme, it's pretty bad at getting cards into the hands of people. That part's not cool.
Let me ask you, how much JumpStart Wheeler did you play the first time it came out?
Oh, I must have played like 12 to 15 queues only.
I played way more. I played so much JumpStart, especially between the first time and the time it came back recently. I played so much JumpStart, and I guarantee you I do not have play sets of all
I wanted to
cards.
offer that like 12 or 15, like that's at the most that I would have played the first time it came out. The first time it came out, I want to say it was only around for 2 weeks, and then recently it was back for at least 2 weeks. And total, I've probably played 30 to 50 queues, maybe. And I really like the format. Like, I really like playing JumpStart. I own almost every dual decks. I just think, like, being able to play with a friend who barely plays Magic, or being able to play like without any work putting into your deck building, just like some kind of passive, mindless, limited. I really like that kind of Magic. I'm really in the mood for it sometimes. And I totally agree that this is a horrible model. Even as someone who's played a ton of JumpStart, I went to look after the end of all my JumpStarting at like which cards I had that I wanted to be able to build Historic or Gladiator decks with. And I'm like, I put like most of my arena time into this format when it was on, and I have basically nothing. Like, I might have had one Muxus. And it's just like, you can't buy these packs in the store while the event is on even. So it's just there to slay your wild cards. And it's real bad.
Yeah, I have a different experience with wildcards because I only use Arena for limited, right? Like I only ever draft or play sealed. And so the rare occasions where I do need to build something, like when we're doing the some sort of goofy like arena cube that Ben Ulmer has put together on the Friday Night Paper Fight, and he's like, you might need a couple wild cards for this. I'm like, okay, whatever. I have like 45 mythic wild cards. Like
Oh my God.
whatever. It's not a problem for me. And I respect that. That is an atypical arena experience.
Well, I think it's not that weird. Like I know several streamers are in the same boat. Like I think Kenji and maybe
Kenji's vault is at like 17,000%, and he refuses to open it.
I mean, even outside of limited only or primarily limited arena players and streamers, I don't know. I get the feeling like that is just a thing that people use arena for.
I mean, I see complaints about this. Is this just like a squeaky wheel scenario? Because I see people complaining about being pinched on wildcards all the time.
Oh, I mean, yes, that is true. As somebody, I tend to be I'm either all in or nothing on a lot of limited formats. Like if I don't particularly have the groove for it, I just won't draft it. I just don't care to for arena. But if I like it, and even if I think like, oh sure, maybe I will play this with the intention of hitting mythic or something like that, then it's easy to get wild cards. Like I have playsets of everything in AFR now and have got it pretty quickly. And again, it's going to vary from player to player, commitment to commitment, but that was just from me doing it like in my off time, just like on one monitor while doing something else. But I also liked what I was doing. So if you don't like what you're doing and it feels like a chore, right, to have to play limited to get these wild cards, then well, you're probably not going to do that. And it feels miserable as you like scramble to try and, every 1,000 gold that you get, you try to crack a pack and hope that you get something you need or something redundant.
They did say in one of the articles that they've improved the like choose your packet algorithm. So they're going to try and get you like your first, one of each crack at all of these cards first, and then I don't know if they're going to try to go back and give you your second crack or whatever, but it's supposed to be better than the first time, because I know like about 5 or 10 queues into JumpStart 1, it was like, oh, it shows me I already have all these basic lands, but I know there's tons that I don't have.
I also wonder how many of the cards in this huge batch of stuff are going to be like critical things. Like how many Muxuses will there be?
Well, that was another huge issue with JumpStart 1 was that it was around the time of the core set. And so a lot of the rares in that set and a lot of the themed packs were tied to that core set, to core, what was it, 2021? Dogs. Yeah, 2021. Yeah. And so you would be like, okay, I'm using my wild card, or I'm using, my gems to do this JumpStart. Oh, okay, well, it's the dog pack. I already got all these when I played core set drafts, or, I did anything in regards to the core set. Oh, okay, cool. Or just redundant cards, just like multiple copies of this rare. It was like the issue where people were complaining about stuff like the Temples and Fabled Passage from Core 2021, but with cards that were just really bad and unplayable that were already on people's accounts.
And they do have duplicate protection. So if you have 4 of a rare already and you open a JumpStart packet that has a 5th copy of that rare, then you'll get the gems. But I've literally never had that happen, right? Because I just don't have play sets of the first JumpStart thing. So yeah, it's definitely, it's not a particularly friendly way to roll all of these cards out onto Arena, because it's like on the upside, it's like, yeah, look, if you want 4 of these cards, then you can just use the wild cards. But the problem is, people who don't have the wild cards and getting it naturally through playing JumpStart is basically not possible if you want 4 of.
The people that are going to be in a situation where they will just need to rely on wild cards in order to get them are also, likely to be the people that just don't have these wild cards because they don't play a lot of limited in general, right? Like they don't have anything to just reliably, set comes out, they buy their cards, they might need a couple more, but they're mostly good because they just don't have them. Because if they're just playing constructed over and over and over again, they're not really getting them.
Yeah, I feel pretty bad for anyone who plays Arena just for constructed and is trying to like be a serious grinder or whatever on Arena, because it's just like, it just feels bad opening all of these boxes just to get the wild cards.
Strixhaven into AFR was an absolute blessing for me. Like it was just, oh, thank God these are fun.
Yeah, the limited formats have been really good lately, I think, for the last several years, but it's just still not everyone's cup of tea.
Yeah. I mean, it's easy for me to say, it's easy for anyone. This is not something I'm actually saying. It's easy for someone to say, oh, well, just draft then. There are people who just stone hate draft, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, look, no, I play Arena to play standard or historic, or I guess supposedly Pioneer is the thing that technically exists, and I don't want to draft. I don't like playing sealed. I just want my wild cards, and it absolutely honks to grind up wild cards through, doing like dailies.
It takes so long, and it's absolutely baffling that there isn't some way. I mean, if they had it implemented that you could buy the packs straight, right? Like at a reasonable ish amount, like Easy Call would do that absolutely, because the time is also just a big thing.
Yeah, my time is not worthless.
Yeah. And like for a thing that is supposed to be, for fun and a hobby, like I don't know if I want to spend time doing what is effectively just like old school MMO dailies, but for, getting my 4th copy of Shoreline Scout or whatever.
Right. So we don't love that, the using JumpStart rollout specifically. What do you feel? I mean, I'm going to throw this to you, Wheeler, as sort of representative of Gladiator, but also, that being by virtue of that, the person who's probably touched Historic the most. Actually, Nelson, I don't know how much Historic you play, if any.
I've played a fair bit.
Okay.
I played the Open, and I've played like a little bit almost every season at least.
Okay. So ignoring doing it through the lens of a JumpStart rollout, how do you feel about this dump truck of Modern Horizons cards being backed up to Arena and scattered all over the floor?
Love it.
All right, cool.
I mean, I kind of just love it. I mean, I'm maybe like, again, every time they do it, Muxus was a bit of a oofa doofa, but mostly when we get these cards, either through the historic anthologies, the remastered draft sets where they inject these powerful cards, or like the mystical archives, right? Like that had to have been one of the things that they were looking to do with that, is knowing that, well, we get to, these cards are going to be in the standard legal set, meaning that they will be on Arena. So it's a way to inject certain cards and fan favorites into it. And I love it. Like, honestly, if I can replicate the feeling of some dorky Jund or Mardu Pyromancer deck or whatever without having to drop $1,000 or go out to a shop or have Moto tickets, like Arena just lets you do that. I feel like it's really good at letting you try different things, and any injections that they make that come paired with more powerful, unique cards like that, I'm all for it.
I want to say, I think that makes sense. And I agree. As a Gladiator player, it's like, we talked about it a fair bit on the weekend, but Gladiator has sort of two things going for it. One, you can kind of like, Brewer's Paradise, 100 card singleton, always room to like try out new ideas. But also, if you just want to have one deck, it generally will be fine to just like not play Magic for 6 to 100 weeks or whatever, come back and your deck is probably still okay, and you just need to update it, but the plan is fine. And so when there's a huge dump of exciting new cards into the format of Gladiator, it's sort of good for both parties. And also, you only need to get one of each. So yeah, I think that's a totally fair stance to have there. For the historic players, my issue is just like, this set is coming out on August 12th. The day of recording and the day of the announcement, I guess, was July 27th. We're recording on July 28th. It's 2 weeks. Like, they just let us know about this massive, like, meteor from space coming to blow up historic, essentially. Like, maybe it won't be that big a deal, but it seems like it. And I just don't know why the historic players don't deserve a release schedule. Like, imagine if we didn't know what sets were coming out in October, right? like we didn't know that Innistrad was coming out next after AFR, but then we're going to find out sometime around September 15th. They'll tell us at the end of the month, oh, there's going to be an Innistrad set. And then 6 weeks later, they're like, oh, there's going to be another Innistrad set, right? Like, that's no way to live.
It has definitely been a thing that he was even present in the anthologies. Like the last Historic Anthology 5, I didn't know it was coming out until like the Tuesday or Wednesday of that week. I was like, oh, wow, this is out already? Oh, okay, these cards are already getting poured out.
I bet that was a fun stream for you, probably.
Well, I just think I have a pretty reasonable finger. My finger's reasonably on the pulse of things that specifically affect this format I'm pretty involved with. It's just like they kind of just come out and do this, and then it's always very shortened, right? Like I guess the preview week for this might be a bit more, but which makes sense. It's a lot more cards, but it's always just kind of like, here it is, there you go. See you next time. And yeah, there's very little time to process it.
It just seems like such a massive sea change for the format when we had the Strixhaven and the archives, and I think there was an anthology in there, and AFR has only just landed, and then it's like, yo, also here's another 300 cards.
Yeah.
Like for the historic players, it's like, if there's only 1 or 2 Muxuses, like if there's still, it's a bigger set, but even if there's twice as many, like say there's 2 Muxuses and 2 Allosaurus Rider level cards that like kind of redefine the shape of the format on their own. Maybe it's not so bad on your wild cards, but from the look of the spoilers we've seen, it seems like, I don't know, these if historic is your favorite format and that's mostly what you play in Arena, like this is kind of bad news for your wallet. So I hope that it ends up being worth it for you and you have a lot of fun trying out these different cards.
I just don't know if, and I assume this will actually vary depending on what player you're talking to, whether something like this is like, oh, fun, more toys, or, oh, Christ, please just lay off for a bit.
That's the reality of Magic releases, I guess, right? Yeah.
Like, this is my absolutely nothing to really back it up aside from my own personal experience, is that I know that printing cards like Thoughtseize into Historic and Collected Company have made me actually care about Historic. And I think the reaction was pretty positive just kind of across the board. And they're like, oh, okay, people like these, and we can, Thoughtseize, hell of a Magic card, we can really push the power on this. And they kept pushing and pushing. And with the anthology too, like, yeah, Brainstorm, a bit of a muck, Time Warp, a bit of a brainstorm. And so, but overall, it's like, oh, people actually like this. Like maybe like there's just turns out if you put powerful cards like that into the hands of people that are playing this format, they will probably enjoy themselves with it a lot. And so maybe they're just like, well, how about we just dump a whole bunch of these onto you as soon as we can and see how you feel? Because like AFR, I mean, Historic didn't really get anything from AFR. I guess Strixhaven it did, but yeah, I don't know. I don't know where I was going with that, actually. Thank you for having me on. It's a pleasure to be here.
No, yeah. People do like playing with new and exciting, powerful cards, right?
Yeah.
So there'll always be an upside when you're releasing new cards in the format. It just, it'd be nice if they're like a little bit more controlled about it, or like let people know more.
Yeah.
Or like, at least let us know like how many releases there's going to be this year.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, a roadmap. God.
I mean, they had a roadmap, and this was just like a very surprising and sudden detour that was inserted into the road we thought we were all traveling down.
Yeah. I mean, what is it? 700 cards total?
Jesus,
something.
Really?
I mean, well, now with that reaction, I feel like that's got to be wrong, but I recall...
No, it's more than that, right?
Is it 880 or something? It's large. It's very large.
I have no idea where to find this information.
It's in the original article.
I'm looking at the original article right now. Hang on.
Oh, 782 cards.
All right,
Holy
great.
moly.
But only 372 are new to Magic Arena. only a full set plus 100 cards.
All right,
Lord.
Factor out the basics, and actually, there's no basics.
Yeah, when they did that already.
Yeah. Wow.
Okay. So let's then move on to the biggest talking point that has popped up out of this, which is the arena only, digital only mechanics. Let's talk about that in broad terms and then talk about each mechanic specifically. So this is big, right? Now, I don't actually know, frankly, this is me just personally, if it's as big and scary as I've seen some people say. A couple sort of big points that I've heard is like, you will never be able to play historic in paper. But that was always the point of historic. Like, paper has ostensibly, again, the format of Pioneer, which has suffered greatly during the pandemic, but presumably they'll be able to get that on track at some point. But the point of historic was always for it to be an arena-only format. And I've seen people say, but now no one will be able to play it on paper. And it's like, were people playing historic on paper anyway? Was that a thing? I feel like that wasn't a thing that people were doing, but regardless, I sort of continue. Arena already exists in a bubble. Like, there are already formats you just can't play on Arena. You can't play any of the Eternal formats like Legacy and Vintage. You can't play like a full, Vintage Cube or something. You can't play Commander. You can't play Two-Headed Giant. There's all kinds of formats you can't play on Arena. So is it the end of the world if there are only formats that you can only play on Arena? I don't think that notion by itself is like a friggin' Ragnarok of Magic.
Yeah, everything old is new again, right? Like, the Magic Online had Mojo Magic, or just Momir Basic, where you get random tokens of any creature in the entire game. And like that, if you're on Commander or Judge Twitter, you'll probably have already seen people saying like, you say we can't play this on paper, I say challenge accepted, and they've got the like full on, printed out complicated 4-card proxy of the Planeswalker.
We definitely tried that once.
Yeah, exactly. And or back in the day, it was, I've got the binder of every single card, and I've got the like randomizer on my phone, and we can do this, we're going to pull the tokens out. So if you're some like, I don't want to be mean, but very rare, let's say diehard, who wants to play historic or gladiator on paper, clearly this isn't going to stop you, right? You've just got to remember that creature's base power and toughness is 0 no matter what, or base power is 0 no matter what now. And you've got to have your Tropical Island token at the ready.
There was definitely a camp of gladiator folks that were eager to play in paper, or like to have it in paper. I definitely was like, well, whenever the first GP that feels safe is opened up, I'm bringing a paper gladiator deck for sure. And even then, we had some arena specific, arena only cards, and people were like, well, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? And it's like, well, I get we just don't play them, or we just play them with like a proxy. Because if there's one thing about, people that play Singleton, is the lengths that they will go to be able to play Singleton and to get other people to play Singleton with them. They are crafty. They'll find a way. Like, it's not that difficult necessarily if you are like geared to engage with these kind of cards. Some of them might be more tedious than others, but even then, it's like accomplishable if you really want to do it. It does make it a little more frustrating, but I mean, even with all these out here, like, yeah, I'll still bring a paper gladiator deck to an event. Maybe have a nice proxy, maybe have a list of everything that Davriel cooks up. I mean, I'm also just extremely boring on all of my takes towards things that people claim will be the end of Magic as we know it.
Well, I mean, you're on the perfect podcast for it. That's been, people have criticized us for being paid shills, just because we're so like, I don't think this is that bad. Like,
all right. Well, as somebody that is consistently surprised that I am yet to be blacklisted for certain things that I have said and criticisms made. This isn't creating a giant divide. Like, this isn't the Rapture. This isn't whatever. It isn't even a divide from the sense of like, this is a point. We have a new so long BC, right? So long BCE. Here's a JHH. Like, a time will start anew. Like, it's just
end of an era.
What?
Magic is a rule set, and these are different interpretations of it, right? I mean, like you said, like, we've had this before, like Momir on Magic Online, and I think it's okay that there are certain formats and things that you can only play in certain situations. I think it's fine if certain formats are only in paper and certain things are only on Arena. I don't have a problem with that. And I don't think that sort of sneering down your nose and going, this is the Hearthstone-ification of Arena or of Magic, and it will be its downfall. Like that's, if you're someone like that who like is sort of, you see this as moving the game of Magic in a different direction that will be harmful to it. Like I don't think that's the case. Like apart from anything else, paper Magic is not going to disappear. They're not going to be like, all right, we're just going to stop making paper Magic and it's going to be Arena only. Sorry.
Yeah, I don't think they're going to be stopping the most popular card game anytime soon that has millions of paper players and continues to have millions of paper players. Graham, if I may, Nelson, if I may, I play a lot of digital card games, quite a bit.
I've noticed.
Yep, I've played, I think, 13 different ones this year, some on camera, some off camera, and I really like card games. I also really like paper card games, including Magic, and many of them that have failed, RIP Transformers. What I'm getting at is the things that digital card games can do, there are some games that are like fine to medium that are completely carried by how neat the usage of the platform is. And some of them are good and also have cool things. And so just like these mechanics that can only like that can realistically be as smooth as butter online. I'm going to say only used online just for making it straightforward, but like that's great. These are always the highlight. It's always the highlight. Like Conjuring is so cool and heads up, and is something that many digital card games do. It's almost like, yeah, of course we do it. The first digital card game did it, and everyone's like, oh my God, this is so smart, right?
Yeah, I actually want to talk a bit about that. That these three mechanics all still feel like things that Magic the Gathering should do. Like these don't feel ridiculous, right? Like
I'm a little worried about the rules headache of Perpetually, but go on.
Well,
I'm going to talk about that in a second, but sorry, go ahead, Wheeler.
It's keywording Yu-Gi-Oh in a way. Where if
okay, wait, no, now I'm off it.
Okay, I promise this is pertinent.
Okay.
So there's Konami, the creator of Yu-Gi-Oh. There's two different versions of Yu-Gi-Oh, the OCG and the TCG. And some cards, let's just say they mostly are the same, but they're not. And one of the things that they do is they don't really keyword anything in the game. So like if I asked you what trample was, and you told me all the rules for trample, that's what cards with trample would have to have printed on them. That's miserable. This is why reading everything's a book.
I love Magic's rules system so much for that.
Yeah, imagine if everything is Questing Beast.
Oh, barf.
It's bad. it's honestly, I've gotten headaches trying to play Yu-Gi-Oh cards. Just being like, oh,
you've never gotten a Magic migraine before?
Oh, I have, but I usually grit my teeth and cast that Lotus. But what they get to do with these cards is just, they get to just package it very nicely and be like, yeah, this is what it does. And in application, it's very straightforward. Once you do it, it's Magic's great at that. Keywords are great at that. And I kind of love it. Right? Because these are all things that you could technically do in paper Magic, but you would have to write them out like Yu-Gi-Oh, like Seek especially, right? Seek or Perpetually, you would just have to have like, I'm not going to do it because we only have so many minutes.
It's a whole paragraph each. Yeah.
It's long, but when you explain it, like you find a random card that meets these qualifications, like that's easy. That's straightforward.
Yeah, let's talk about one of the other spoilers that we've seen so far, Bounty of the Deep. 2 and a blue for a sorcery. If you have no land cards in your hand, seek a land card and a non-land card. Otherwise, seek 2 non-land cards.
God.
So you could do that in paper. You'd have to be like, all right, so look, here's my hand. You see I have no land cards in it, so I'm going to go looking for a land and a non-land. So I'm going to disassemble my deck, but keep it in order, and we're going to randomly use some big dice. And you could actually do this in paper. It would just be prohibitive and a pain in the ass and stupid.
Well, I think you couldn't do it, but you can have a squire do it.
Yeah, exactly, right? Because otherwise you'd know the order of your deck. Yeah, so it'd be very, very silly. But this card, by the way, seems pretty sweet, actually.
It's just like, again, it's very it's very sleek, but like the digital aspect of it does so much heavy lifting.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't say you have to reveal your hand, because the game knows you're not cheating.
Yeah.
And your opponent can, ideally trust Arena to be like, oh yeah, they don't have any lands or whatever. Like it'll just get the result that is appropriate without having to add, as an additional cost, reveal your hand or whatever.
So how about Faceless Agent? 3 mana, so it's colorless. 2/1 shapeshifter. It has changeling. When a Faceless Agent enters the battlefield, seek a creature card of the most prevalent creature type in your library.
Oh, it's so good.
Yeah, I like this a lot.
Oh, it's so cool.
And what I like is that the most prevalent creature type could change, like depending on what cards you've drawn.
How you draw, yeah, exactly. I also just like that, I don't know, there's a sort of tribal format that's come out on MTGO before, and I think the rules were like almost every creature in your library has to be of the certain creature type. But this card just says like, okay, I clearly support tribal synergies and tribal decks. Or maybe you've just got me in here to find the one other creature in your deck or something, right? Like there's that flexibility. But also if I am in a tribal deck, it's okay that you're playing like the fairies that support the goblins or the clerics that support the demons. This is going to go get the demon if you have like 16 demons and 5 clerics or whatever.
Yeah.
So I think it's a really cool card.
I want to talk about Conjure a little bit because you mentioned it already. It was a card that was spoiled, Boneyard Aberration.
Oh yeah.
4 and a black for a 3/3 skeleton dog. So it looks like the skeleton of Cerberus, but the skulls are human, which is kind of wild. And when it dies, you exile it. And then if you do that, which you don't have a choice, but the if is just in case something happens in the intervening time. If you do, conjure 3 reassembling skeleton cards into your graveyard.
This is just a Misty Boosty card.
Oh, is it one of them?
I haven't seen this.
Is it one of the white cards?
Yeah.
Is it one of the plain cards?
No, there was a skeleton that when it when it goes to your graveyard, you would get rid of it and put 4 reassembling skeletons into your graveyard.
Oh, nice.
I don't know what its name is, but the art is just like a happy skeleton on it. Holy smokes.
I'm sure this isn't the best card in Magic, but I feel like it also is.
I just love Misty Boosties and Mystery Booster for people that are still listening to this after I said the words Misty Boosty.
Here it is. Bone Rattler.
Bone Rattler, yeah.
3 black for a 4/4 skeleton. When this is put into your graveyard from anywhere, exile it. When you do, create 4 reassembling skeleton tokens. Yeah, so it is.
Well, they nerfed it. They had to nerf it. Turns out Bone Rattler was too good.
Bone Rattler was a messed up card.
They had to nerf it a bit.
But I mean, Conjure completely works in paper, 100%. There's the only reason that you couldn't do it in paper is access to the physical cards. And sort of this notion that it's like you have to have the card, but it doesn't actually take up space in your deck or your sideboard, so it exists in this weird sort of like negazone that isn't actually
creating the card.
Yeah, also the Tropical Island is on the reserve list.
Yeah. That one, honestly, that's one of the ones that I want to talk about.
Yeah. Let's talk about Shoreline Scout some more.
This card this is a perfect example of taking something that just fixes issues Merfolk has. Like as a deck, and specifically for like Historic, or if anybody has tried to play Merfolk and Gladiator or Canlander, where you can absolutely do it, but you're always in that awkward like, well, I have Tropical Island and Breeding Pool and that's it. And I have some green cards, but every one of my cards wants islands. And so this card just says like, oh, hey, well, when I come into play, how about I just turn one of your extra cards into like the perfect land you wish you had, like, and doesn't use counters, which is a recurring theme with a lot of these things, is they've recognized how important counters are in interacting in Magic, and they're like, okay, well, how about we just poof give you the card? Like this card is just beautiful design. I love it. It's so like, it just gives you everything Merfolk ever wanted, but has been told no, you can't have it.
And
wow.
What do you think about, like, does it matter at all that it's like making a card that's on the reserve list? I don't think it does.
No. Because
it's, again, Arena is a separate sphere of the Magic the Gathering play multiverse.
I mean, we've seen Garth from Modern Horizons 2 is kind of a similar thing.
Oh, right. That makes a Black Lotus token, right?
Yeah. And this basically just is looking to accomplish that without putting a token into your hand.
Nelson, do you have any thoughts on that?
I mean, I also think that Shoreline Scout is really cool, but I don't have a ton of experience with Merfolk, and I'm not sure how much is going to smooth out the archetype, so I will defer. In general, though, yeah, I think Conjure is a cool digital-only mechanic. I've seen it encountered in Hearthstone, but I believe I've also noticed that, like, a lot of the digital games use it. It's kind of like the basic, like, hey, you don't have to have a paper library. We can just, like, make stuff happen.
Yeah, Conjure is what I had in mind when I was saying, like, this is the number one thing that digital card games did. And they're like, oh, that's cool. We want to be able to do that.
Yeah, I guess I do want to sneak in that, like, it should be expected to be kind of a big deal and sort of exciting that we have, like, I know it's shifted a ton over the years. It's not all the same people from 1993 or whatever. And, like, you know, by and large, that's good. And the company has grown and, like, it's a very powerful design studio. But we have, like, you know, the original and the most popular games design studio, the card games design studio, now taking advantage of, like, all the other work that, you know, all these very successful game developers in the digital CCG space have, like, you know, the soil they've tilled over the last 10 years. Now we've kind of got, like, the, you know, the seasoned pros being like, okay, let's grab the best of the kind of known entities in digital card design space, and we'll make the most fun cards, hopefully.
Every card game after Magic has pulled so much from Magic. Now it's time they give back.
Exactly. Yeah. No.
Yeah, you know what? That's fair. Yeah. Before we talk about Perpetually, I want to say that this isn't named as a keyword, but there's other things that can be done digital only that they've decided to go with. I want to talk briefly about Sarkhan's Scorn. It's 2 and a red for an instant. Sarkhan's Scorn deals damage equal to the number of turns you have begun to target creature or planeswalker. Totally doable in paper. In fact, there was a card like that. There was a mystery booster card that tracked number of turns. It's just a pain in the ass to track that and remember to do it, especially subtly. If you're, like, trying to write it down on, like, a life pad and just be like, why are you counting how many turns? Oh, no reason. Nothing at all. Just leaving 3 mana up.
Anybody that's played in an event has heard, did I play a land this turn? Did I draw?
Yeah.
Sorry, did I draw my card? What turn is it?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's ugh.
I mean, I consider this sort of like a quality of life improvement along with on Arena. You don't have to actually shuffle. Right. So it's like, yeah, this is a card. I don't see any problem with like this card. This is a card that could absolutely exist in paper.
Another card that could absolutely exist in paper and uses some new language, Sky Shroud Ambush, 1 and a green for an instant, says target creature you control fights target creature you don't control. And then when the creature you control wins the fight, draw a card. Now, we haven't seen wins the fight before on a card. But we could probably win a bet where we're betting that it means your creature survives and the enemy creature dies during the resolution of this card.
Right. That's just like putting trample on a burn spell. It's like,
yeah, you know what I mean, right?
Yeah, like I'll wait to see it all written out, but I have a pretty good guess about what that means. You know, like put a flying counter on this creature. Oh, okay, got it. It's a counter that gives the creature flying. Totally get it. When your creature wins the fight. Oh yeah, no, mine lives and theirs dies. Awesome, got it. Totally. You know,
the land.
But yeah.
It's the land continues to burn.
Oh, I love that one.
Like, you know,
right.
Like, you know what that means, right?
Right.
Usually, and I think even new players are like, stuff like this does track well because it just kind of, no matter what your level of involvement in the game is, like if you said, what do you think you win the fight, or what do you think the land will continue to burn after you put a blaze counter on this land, it's smooth, it's silky smooth.
Yeah, when are we getting Obsidian Fireheart in JumpStart? I hope it's this set. Give me some Gladiator Obsidian Fireheart big red action.
Yeah. And then yeah, let's talk about Perpetually, because oofa doofa. So let's look at Davriel's Withering. Single black mana for an instant. Target creature perpetually gets -1/-2. I don't mind the idea of something like this that is, you know, like a creature enchantment, but it can't be interacted with like a creature enchantment. Like it's doesn't work if you can't bounce anything off it, you can't disenchant it. That's cool and everything. The sticks on it, like wherever the card goes, that's weird because that messes with like sort of my fundamental understanding of like, but if I blink a creature or if the creature dies, then it's not the same iteration of that creature, and that's why the counters fall off, and that's why, you know, if you target it and I blink it, then it's a different creature and the thing that you're targeting is gone now. But this thing is perpetually like that. And some people realized, of course, there's a lot of brawl commanders with 2 toughness, and it's like, wait, anywhere, like even the command zone, so the commander's just dead forever? What?
Yeah, this seems a little sketchy for Brawl. That's totally fair. I don't play a ton of Brawl, but like last time I did, I think I was using the Boros Mentor 3/2. So like this is like 1 mana to just stuff my deck.
Well, like Emery of the Lock, whatever her name is.
Right.
Oh, well, I mean, that's fine.
Yeah, it's okay if you blow up Emery forever.
Yeah, you getting rid of an Emery is fine.
They deserved it. They know what they did.
There's a lot of 2-power commanders, and it's like, I guess we're just going to ban these cards from Brawl, or like they can't.
Well, hold on.
This just makes people unable to play certain cards as commanders if that's the case.
Do we have received confirmation that perpetually follows to the command zone?
We
well,
have.
It says wherever, but no, we don't know.
Well, it says other zones of play. I mean, I guess like
right.
Yeah, no matter where they go during gameplay. So like, I don't know. I assume that there will be some sort of thing where it's like, but not the command zone, or like that doesn't actually affect commanders, or something that just prevents that from ruining a bunch of commander decks.
Maybe they'll come out with a Brawl specific rule, right? That's just like another game zone or something. They'll just come up with a rule. Yeah.
Perpetually is another card that I absolutely, or another mechanic that I'm kind of in love with. I went from I kind of like what they're doing here, but I'm a little indifferent to after thinking about it over a week or so. I'm kind of in love with a lot of these cards, and I'm happy to see them and these effects, because like perpetually is just again something that people like control players have got to be like super happy. Like finally, your scrap heap scrounger has been bullying me for long enough. Or just like, I don't know, the combo nerd in me saw these and I was like, so I can make my creature have lower power, which means that I can keep bringing it back with a card like Revelark.
Yeah, that crossed my mind too, the Revelark interaction.
Or like just always giving it death touch, and oh my god, yeah.
Or like if you need to like sneak your creature to a certain power so that you can make it unblockable more easily or something, or like so that it gets affected by your mass reanimation spell, like there's a bunch of weird combo shenanigans you can do. But it is super confusing. I agree with you. You said it already, Graham, but it's like, I can shrink this thing and then that works even if it goes to exile, but like if I try to target with some other removal, like exiling it does stop that. Like it's just kind of, I do think perpetually it feels counterintuitive to like a bunch of the things we've learned about Magic. Like if you're a Magic, beyond novice, if you're a Magic expert or a Magic veteran, it's like perpetually's got to seem weird and unfamiliar, right? Like it's got to seem kind of, you're wearing a suit that doesn't fit when you look at this card.
Yeah, and also one's like, so I've got Mentor of Evos Isle up on screen, which is 2 and a blue for a 2/1 flying bird wizard, and when it enters the battlefield, choose a creature card in your hand. It perpetually gains flying. And there's a Plague Crafter's Familiar, 1 and a black 1/1 rat with death touch. When it enters the battlefield, choose a creature card in your hand. It perpetually gains death touch. But you don't reveal that. You just tell Arena this one, and Arena's like, got it. And when you play it, Arena tells your opponent, don't worry, this is the card that they chose. I checked. And it's just so not what I'm used to.
If it means, I mean, again, it's going to be different from person to person. I understand that the digital card game world it's a vast landscape that can be taunting and daunting and whatever the proper word is. A lot of this ends up becoming a bit more normalized and intuitive, like just by playing it. I think they've been, so far from what I've seen, they've been really heads up on these mechanics just working in a way that makes sense. Almost like slang,
Yeah, I mean, I completely get that. Like, I'm sure that the first time doing any of these things, it'll be like, oh, this makes perfect sense. It's smooth like butter because it all just happens on Arena. I guess it is. I mean, that's probably a big part of why it's so scary to folks, is that it is such a huge change, and some things just don't work in the way that we've always been told and learned how Magic cards work, and it's going to be really weird and different.
There's got to be some weird new infinite loop with Nethroi, right? By the time the set fully spoiled, I'm sure there's some weird new thing you can do with Nethroi where you shrink your own creatures and then you get like some ridiculous ETB effects that keep popping off, right?
Yeah.
Did you see that there's also an artifact that's just like, it's a Momir Vig emblem?
I did not.
It's the Pool of Vigorous Growth.
Oh.
Pretty sure there's a reflection of Momir looking into the pool. So it's 1 and green for an artifact. And it says X and tap and discard a card, create a token that's a copy of a random creature with mana value X, activate only as a sorcery. So it's
wow.
just Momir.
So this is like kind of one of the more important cards of the set, as it's a nod to the like Moto version of this set, right? It's like we took Momir basic and we've gone beyond into the arena possibilities. That's pretty cool. Also, vigorous growth.
Yeah, that's a
very good. Like I appreciate that tremendously.
good pool.
Nice pool.
Nice pool. What you got growing in there? Some kind of lizard? Neat. And of course, presumably when it says random creature, it means only among those available on Arena.
They did add a whole bunch of cards that were not on Arena to Momir. Like, I'm fairly certain they did some kind of Momir-esque game mode where you could get like Grizzlebrand.
Right.
And stuff. Yeah.
Wasn't that part of Historic Horizons, or is Grizzlebrand not technically on Arena?
Grizzlebrand's not on Arena. No. There was just like, they did a mode where they're like, you can get creatures from, everywhere.
Wow.
This card's going to be historic legal though, so I wonder if they're going to want to do that for historic. Oh, I had one other thing I wanted to touch on earlier, if I may. We've gone through a bunch of cards and talked about mechanics, and while we were discussing the effects on the format, it's interesting the timing of this set not too long after the kind of like let down about like the news about the Pro Tour sort of being like over, like the Pro Tour dream or whatever, like letting pros know that like this isn't a lifestyle that's going to be actively supported. There will still be organized play. Obviously, there's still been organized play, but like historic is a format that we see the best players in the world compete for, millions, air quotes, like was millions or whatever, but a lot of dollars, let's say, enough to pay for plane tickets and hotel stays and like months of training and working together to find the best decks and tighten their play and be the best Magic players. And, we're used to them playing standard and draft and sometimes modern, very rarely legacy, pioneer, and recently historic. And now it's like, okay, so historic's solidly here, probably moving in a direction where like it's more is going to be left up to chance. There's going to be more kind of like wacky, out of nowhere, insane plays, it seems like, from the cards in this set, and appeal more to the casual player. And I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing, but it might be like kind of hand in hand with the fact that like, okay, like pro play is losing some of the focus, and historic pro play might encounter like a lot of weird situations where you're like, well, I worked hard and I tried my best to bring the best deck, and then like my opponent paid 3 and tapped their Pool of Vigorous Growth and like got some protection from my deck knight that isn't in their deck or whatever, and then I didn't make top 8, right? Like stuff like that is kind of bound to happen.
Crystalline Golem already exists, so and like for a more like, for a less snarky response, I mean this genuinely. Are you two familiar with a Hearthstone card called Yogg-Saron?
I am familiar with Yogg-Saron.
I'm not.
Well, there was this card called Yogg-Saron, Graham, and it was a Hearthstone card and a top deck, and it was the best deck, and it had an ability that you got to cast a random spell for each spell you had already cast this game. It was gross and bad.
This is Yogg-Saron, Master of Fate?
No, this was Hope's End. Bow down to the God of Death. And that was bad. Really bad.
Yeah, it was pretty bad for the format.
They got rid of it eventually. Yeah, they had it at a pro play, and pro players are like, this sucks. They're like, okay, we'll get rid of this. And then, nerf it significantly, I guess. And that was about 6 years ago. I think that we're unlikely to see some of these random cards, have real competitive legs, because usually it's just better to be able to make the choice, right?
Right.
Yeah, for sure.
So, I mean, we did a whole lot of talking. And there's more. No. There's more cards that we could talk about specifically, but I mean, the more like I came into this fairly sort of okay with it, and honestly, having talked about it with you both out loud, I'm leaving more excited about it. Like I truly don't think this is a problem. I definitely don't think that this is going to break Magic in any way. Magic is not going away, and the Magic that you know and love still exists. But I don't think that having weird cards that only function on Arena is going to be bad.
Yeah, I mean, how many times have people been like, hey, if you're going to print Commander only cards, can you not have them destroy Legacy, right?
Right.
Or like, I mean, I'm just thinking of True Name Nemesis. And they were kind of just like, okay, how about we, here are these cards that won't affect other paper competitive formats. And isn't that a good thing?
Right.
Is that a good thing?
Yeah.
Like, if you want to play high stakes competitive Magic, either in paper or say on Magic Online, then you can do that without having to look at my vigorous pool.
And I do want to say, though, I imagine that if you need to hear this, you probably are not still listening, if you ever were. But I think it's totally fine to not like this. And I think that not liking, like, I don't want to make it sound like, because I've been trying to be very careful with my words. If you don't like this, I don't think it's a case of like, oh, well, some people just don't like change. Like it's totally fine if you hate this. I get it. All I'm saying is I don't.
Nice.
Yeah, like I think there's value in having synchronicity between a digital client and the physical game, and Magic was like the only game to do that, almost the last bastion of that. And now, I mean, Arena specific cards that have existed for a couple of years aside, now that's changing, and like that, it's perfectly fine to not like that and even make sense, right? Like I get that, I understand.
Yeah.
But God, is this clean? I can't. I think I hit a point where it's like, finally. Like that was my reaction. It was like, finally. Cool. Please take advantage of the platform that you are using.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, what we always said years ago, and I mean, we like just amongst ourselves, just as friends, when we were looking at the state, and I mean that in like the sort of the Great Britain sort of wording of like the absolute state of Magic Online, right?
Yeah.
Was like, it's a digital thing, like embrace it, like do the thing where you make the card small, like, do what Hearthstone does, where it's like you have the full card, but then when you put it on the board, it's smaller and you can just see the art and the little, the power and toughness. And then Arena came along and it was finally, they were like, all right, look, we're now embracing the fact that we're making a digital card game. We're not trying to make a computer game where you can play the cardboard game. We're going to make an actual digital card game. And that was good. That was to the benefit of Arena and Magic the Gathering as a whole. And this is a furthering of that, of like, well, hang on. We're a totally digital game on Arena. Let's do totally digital stuff. Sure.
Yeah, I think there's a small chance you don't like it and it lessens your enjoyment of Historic, or it lessens your enjoyment of watching Historic. And, there's definitely an upside on the other side of that. For all the people who don't like it, there's going to be lots of people who really enjoy it because these cards are very cool. And probably the worst news is just the JumpStart distribution model.
Yeah, I do admittedly very much not like that. And the thing is, I'm hyped about more JumpStart because I love JumpStart, but it's
these
like
JumpStart games are going to be fun. That's true. Yeah.
And like I said, I'm not a constructed player, so I'm not personally sweating about grinding out the wild cards to get the whatever rares in here that I'm going to need to get to like round up my collection. But I respect it for those who that is a concern, that this honks and I don't like it. So, haha, don't say I never said anything critical.
That's not fair, Graham. You can't enjoy things and also be critical about aspects of the company that you disagree with.
What?
Yeah, sorry.
Oh.
I'm going to have to ask you to make a less nuanced and reasonable take.
All right. Buy from Card Kingdom.
Yeah.
Nice.
They sponsor this show, cardkingdom.com/LRR. Check them out. Buy their stuff. Because here's a complete lack of all nuance. Buy stuff from them so they keep paying us.
Yeah.
There.
Card Kingdom shilling.
There you go. That's who we shill for. We're very open about it. And of course, we shill for ourselves, which you should go to the Patreon and support us directly, because that's also how we keep living. We appreciate it. Unless there's anything else from either of you, that is going to do it for this evening.
I was just going to talk about how you should buy from Card Kingdom more, so I'm good.
Tap, tap, cold, sober takes. I'm out.
Love it. All right. Well, until next time, I have been Graham, joined by Nelson.
Bye.
And special guest Wheeler.
Bye-bye.
Jordan edits these. Heather gets them online. Thank you all so much for listening. We'll talk to you next time.